Good morning. Good morning. One more try, man. One more try. Good morning. All right, I figured I need to bring more, huh? It's my fault. All right, how y'all doing today? Everybody doing all right? Good. My name is Elliot Robinson. I am in the Special Collections Division. I'm a program specialist right up here on the second floor of this building here. And I want to welcome everyone to Nashville Public Library for today's program, Jefferson Street, From Renewal to Revitalization. And we're particularly thankful to all of you for joining us today, and particularly grateful to Vanderbilt University for helping us in support and putting on this program today. Before we begin, let us all be reminded that we occupy the stolen and ancestral and traditional lands of the Cherokee, Shawnee, Choctaw, Chickasaw, and Creek nations, and we want to make sure to honor all the ancestral stewards of this land on which we meet today. Now, today's event marks the revival of Conversations at NPL, long-standing humanities-based public program series presented by Special Collections, which aims to stimulate serious public dialogue on all facets of culture, history, and modern society. These public programs broaden the work we do upstairs in our exhibit program spaces, the Civil Rights Room and the Votes for Women Room, where we inspire students of all ages, plus members of corporations, faith, and community-based organizations with the stories of Nashville's rich civil rights history, and engage them and visitors from all over the world in meaningful conversations about our past and connecting the dots to the present to look at why we still seem to be fighting many of the same battles. Now, Jefferson Street has long served as a crossroads for Black Nashville. Now I better make sure I put Black North Nashville in here, because I'm sure we probably got somebody from out south or out east who will say, hold on now, we had some things going on too. But what began as a footpath to the river prior to the Civil War, this historic street developed into the financial and educational, cultural, and spiritual hub of North Nashville's African American community. The once vibrant thoroughfare was bisected by Interstate 40 in the late 1960s, and the community was devastated, becoming a mere shell of itself. But in recent years, changes have happened. But who benefits most from these changes, and how do they affect longtime residents of the areas that are now being gentrified? Today's conversation will help us better understand Jefferson Street's historic role in our city and how it has thrived and survived over the decades. Now, I'm going to introduce these fine-looking people on our stage here. Our moderator for today's conversation, resplendent in black and white, is Ms. Tasneem Ansaria Grace, who is a writer, humanities scholar, and performance artist who facilitates engagements that explore the soul connection of our collective humanity. She worked as a newspaper journalist for nearly 20 years and has worked with several nonprofits in Syracuse, New York, here in Nashville, Tennessee, and in Belize, Central America, as a community engagement manager, content creator, and editor. Some of you may recognize or remember her from her wonderful work here at NPL Special Collections. And we certainly miss having her on our team, but in 2021, Tasneem became vice president of Mosaic Changemakers, a leadership program that develops and trains emerging and future black and brown leaders, community leaders in the South. At Mosaic, she creates and co-leads interactive seminars on identity, race, personal responsibility, and community consciousness. Ms. Tasneem Grace. And then I'll start on my far left and work my way in. Dr. Lerotha Williams, Jr. is a scholar of African American, Civil War and Reconstruction, and public history at Tennessee State University. He spearheads the North Nashville Heritage Project, which encourages a greater understanding of the history of North Nashville, including but not limited to Jefferson Street, and North Nashville's historic relationship to the greater Nashville community. His most recent project is the guidebook, I'll Take You There, exploring Nashville's social justice sites, edited along with Dr. Amy Thurber. In this book, more than 100 Nashvillians take us there, guiding us to places we might not otherwise encounter, or places we might drive by every day and not even know their significance. And these entries bear collective witness to the ways that power has been historically used to tell or omit certain stories, while also celebrating the power of the counter-narrative as a tool to resist injustice. Dr. Lee Williams. Dr. Mary Ellen Pethel is an author, historian, digital humanist, and academic entrepreneur who serves as assistant professor of global leadership studies and honors at Belmont University within the Interdisciplinary Studies and Global Education Division. After completing her PhD in history at Georgia State University, Dr. Pethel taught her first class at Belmont in 2012. Since that time, she has published several essays and 5 books, including Athens of the New South, College Life and the Making of Modern Nashville. In 2019, Dr. Pethel launched NashvilleSites.org, a digital project focused on free, self-guided, mobile-friendly walking tours that tell the full and complex story of Nashville's history. Dr. Mary Ellen Pethel. Lastly, but certainly not least, to my immediate left, Attorney Edward T. Kendall is a native Nashvilleian who attended local public schools growing up in the district and graduated from the illustrious Pearl High School. He didn't tell me to say that, but and also Tennessee State University and Nashville School of Law. Attorney Kendall has also faithfully served our community as a member of the Metro School Board and also as a Metro Councilman. Brother Kendall is the proud author of the incredible book, A Walk Down Historic Jefferson Street, from the 1940s to the early 1970s, Dark Clouds and Silver Linings During an Era of Segregation. This book is an eminent expression of his love for and pride in his community and its rich history. He explores the Jefferson Street community through the lens of its prestigious educational institutions and its once prosperous economic center before the city's invasive construction measures in the late 1960s. A walk down historic Jefferson Street provides a thorough, compelling, and personal look at the history of the driving force of Black North Nashville. Attorney Ed Kendall. Now, that's all I'm saying right now, because I know you all didn't come in here to hear me. So I'm going to move out of the way, and we're going to begin this conversation. Jefferson Street, from renewal to revitalization. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Elliot. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Can we be a little more excited about being out of the house and past the biggest fears of the pandemic to where we feel like we can be in spaces protected and healthy and enjoying conversations? Let's clap for that. We are grateful. So we have an assignment. Someone told me that this is supposed to feel like a family reunion. I don't know about your family reunions, but in mine, there's always some jokers with some jokes, some people with some old-time stories, and people with lots of questions and who are excited to listen to people who have information to share. So we're going to create that vibe together. But I also want to invite you into a space of time travel. We are going to go back in time, and we're using stories to do that. We're going to go back into the 40s and the 50s, the 70s, but we're going to end up in 2023. We're not going to stay in yesteryear. Part of this conversation is to transport us, to help us see where we've been, where we are, but to also get into a space of imagination. Where do we want to go? How much of our conversations about Jefferson Street are just in the mythic Jefferson Street? Dr. Lee says that Jefferson Street is a place that's often told through memory. So today, our assignment as time travelers is to begin to tell a story that includes memory, but it includes the now also. So we're going to start with you, Dr. Lee, because I love when you said that. But I also love how you describe yourself. You call yourself a wanderer, and you call yourself a memory keeper. So I want you to go back into your memory. When you first came to Nashville, how was Jefferson Street introduced to you? And when you first went on Jefferson Street, what did you see, and how does it contrast with what you know now?
Okay, thank you for the question, and let me offer up some thanks for the invitation to be on this panel. As I look across from me, I see one of the preeminent conversationalists in the city. I see an award-winning historian, and I see the sage of Jefferson Street. So I'm honored to be here, and I'll be very thoughtful with my responses. I'm not from Nashville. I'm from Tallahassee, Florida. And typically, if you say you're from Tallahassee in this city, you receive a somewhat visceral response from anybody that went to Tennessee State University. And I'm a historian, and I'm a public historian, and that requires me to be in public spaces, right? So I have a profound love of African American history. So it's like, okay, I'm here. Let me see what the hype is about Jefferson Street. So the first place I went was the barbershop. And although you're looking at me now, and you're probably like, he ain't been to a barbershop in a long time.
Both of us.
That's all right. Because I understood that barbershops were places that you go to get more than a haircut, right? Your barbershops were archives of the culture of the community. It was a cross-section of a space that held a cross-section of ideas from the community. So I'd heard about Jefferson Street. I was very familiar with the civil rights story that played out in the community, but I wanted a little bit more. I'm really interested in history in the margins, history that occurs amongst people that are oftentimes overlooked. So I got in there, and once they figured out I was a TSU Tiger and I loved TSU, one of the things I had to prove was that I knew the alma mater. I had to be able to sing that to their satisfaction. But once that occurred, that is when I began hearing stories about Jefferson Street that went beyond just Jimi Hendrix. Stories about Jefferson Street that went beyond the civil rights movement. I got into a project that was designed to, y'all know where the Gateway to Heritage Plaza is down there? I was involved in that, and I really didn't know a whole lot about the community, but Kwame Lillard took us on a tour of the community. I mean, we walked all the way down Jefferson Street, and he talked about the importance of the site. And when the class that I took on the tour met again, one of the students said, well, what about those other streets, Dr. Williams? Don't they have a story? Then the residents there contribute to our understanding of what Jefferson Street became. So that's where it began, a simple oral history project, and we were mindful that you're dealing with people's memories, and the memories are precious to us. You don't want to take these stories and just treat them any and every kind of way. There was also a measure of respect that was required. And that's how I got involved. It first took a moment of cultivating trust from people like Mr. Kendall as well. I used to slip by Mr. Kendall's house on Fridays when things were slow and just to chat him up. But that's how my involvement began. And I was also very cognizant of the fact that I had access to spaces that other people might not have access to. So I made sure to tell those stories in those spaces.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Dr. Pethel, same thing. I want you to go back in your timeline, your memory. You come to Nashville. What do people tell you to see? And when you hear about Jefferson Street, what was your experience of hearing people's memories of it, and how does it contrast with what you know now?
Well, like Dr. Williams, I'm also not a Nashville native or a Tennessee native. I came from Northwest Georgia, about 45 minutes or so north of Atlanta. And as I mentioned in the introduction, I went to Georgia State University, and so when it came time for me to write my dissertation, I focused mostly on late 1800s, early 1900s through the Great Depression with that gilded progressive era, but I was really focused on the development of the modern city. And I decided that the modern city I really wanted to focus on for my dissertation was Nashville, so much so that I moved here. I was able to get a teaching job, which made that move a little easier to have a paycheck. But I began doing research on Nashville because of what attracted me was because it had this moniker of the Athens of the South. And you often think of the Athens of the South being, you think of the Southern Ivy of Vanderbilt, but my contention was what made us Athens of the South were the HBCUs in town, and that we were an epicenter as a city with Fisk and TSU and American Baptist and Meharry, of course, that it was an epicenter that drew people to Nashville and also provided a place for Nashville high school graduates to attend school. And so the research really focused there, and that was my big introduction to Jefferson Street and to North Nashville. And then that research continued into the 30s and after the dissertation, 30s, 40s, and 50s, and that's when you really see the public policy negatively affecting the area with Congress passes in 1937 the National Housing Act, and then you've got the National Highway Act in 1957 You also have a capital redevelopment, capital redevelopment plan? Is that the name? That happens here in Nashville. It was one of the first things that began to affect North Nashville in a negative way. So looking at some of those patterns, but then applying them to other cities, that was my introduction to Jefferson Street, and realizing how was Nashville similar to other cities, because these were happening in lots of cities. North Nashville was not the only city that was divided by an interstate. But using and thinking about Nashville and its unique role also as this hub of higher education for HBCUs, and that then connection with the civil rights movement just makes Nashville a different place than anywhere else. And that was where my storytelling really kicked in, and we can talk a little bit more about Nashville Sites later, but in helping to engage community members in North Nashville you have to provide a space, but you want people in the community to tell their own stories. But so trying to build something that allowed the community to be representative and to tell their own stories was really the goal of some of those Nashville Sites projects. And that's where I learned even more about Jefferson Street and North Nashville.
That's awesome. Thank you, Dr. Pethel. I have learned a lot. I'm going to call you Attorney Kendall right now, but I might slip up and call you Brother Kendall too, because we had a family reunion and that happens, right? So your book expounded on what Dr. Pethel was just saying about that Jefferson streets are everywhere. There are so many places in this country that have a Jefferson Street. Your book talks about Columbia, South Carolina, Camden, New Jersey, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Pasadena, California, Charlotte, North Carolina, Indianapolis, Indiana. I'm going to throw Syracuse, New York in there where I grew up. I-81, if you go there now, it divides the Black community. And as a kid, I would wonder why I have to walk under an underpass to get downtown. I read your book and I'm like, oh, it was by design. One of the things that you do in your book, and if you all haven't purchased or seen or gone to the Special Collection Center to get a copy and look at a copy of A Walk Down Historic Jefferson Street, is that he tells these stories, and you get a chance to, thank you, awesome book. You get a chance to meet his dad, you get a chance to meet his lovely wife, Beverly, you get a chance to meet a lot of people, and Mr. Kendall has given me permission to read some of what he's written, but also his wife has poetry throughout the book. They begin each chapter with a poem. And this is from page 26. Humbly as a footpath and wagon trail I stretched, from Hadley's plantation to the Cumberland I grew. Only joy, pleasure, and hard work my people knew. As time went by, I swelled with strong natural pride, entrusted with many a business, church, and home, schools nestled, giving our children places to roam. He's describing Jefferson Street, but also segregation. And I'm loving how complicated this is now, because there's a paradox here. Segregation is often talked about in depressing terms, right? It's like, oh, the lack and scarcity. But here we have beautiful words: pride, natural pride, entrusting, things that develop from a footpath. And then you give us this rich blend of celebrities, which I think is part of the lore of Jefferson Street. Langston Hughes, Jesse Jackson, Arna Bontemps, Stokely Carmichael, Muhammad Ali, W.E.B. Du Bois, Carl Rowan, Nat King Cole, Sam Cooke, Jimi Hendrix, Ray Charles. So what I need from you, tell us a little bit about some of these people. And when you were living there growing up, is it 2510 Jefferson Street where you were born?
Correct.
In the living room. I heard you were born in the living room.
That was my introduction to Jefferson Street at
Yes, it was.
11 o'clock at night.
10 pounds, 4 ounces.
At 10 pounds, 4 ounces.
Mm-hmm.
In the front room of my home.
The front room of your home, where you lived from newborn to teen years. Did you know it was legendary when you were living there? What did it feel like?
Just felt good. I didn't think of it being legendary. But Jefferson Street, and when I decided to write the book, because I had a hankering to write it for many years, and of course after they came through with the interstate and divided the community, it really gave me the impetus, because I wanted to preserve the history that I knew. Jefferson Street was a rich, vibrant community from the 40s all the way up to about 1970 or 74. We had barbershops, but we also had doctor's offices. We had hardware stores. I mean, we just had a gamut of just about everything you wanted. It was kind of like being a little town within a town. And you really didn't have to leave Jefferson Street unless you wanted to go downtown. And then when you went downtown, there were some difficulties because you had to go down the alley. If you're African American, you had to go down the alley to go upstairs or watch a movie. You couldn't try on clothes. If you tried them on, you had to carry them with you. Couldn't put them back on the shelf. So, and there were bathrooms, restrooms, and water fountains for whites and blacks. This was what we call the old Jim Crow days. But as we were talking about in the book, I talk about dark clouds and silver linings. You want me to go there at this point?
Sure.
The dark clouds, of course, were the Jim Crow laws. It's the discrimination that we realized in the community. But the silver linings were we had the best of the best teachers. We could cherry pick because black teachers couldn't teach at white schools. So, when you think about it, we had the best of the best teachers. We also had teachers who lived in the community, who understood discrimination, who suffered from the same discrimination that we did, and they were dedicated and committed to making sure that we got a good education. When I graduated Pearl High School, or was graduated from Pearl High School, over 75% of my class went on to either college or the armed services or some higher degree. Now we have a difficult time sometimes getting 75 to graduate from high school. But education was top of the line in that community. I mean, if you didn't have, everybody thought, you got to get a good education. I remember when I first left here and went to work for IBM in Washington, D.C. That was in 1968. And I caught a cab out to IBM. And the cab driver, we got to talking. He said, well, I'm a professor at Howard University. I said, you're a professor and you're driving a cab? But he said, in Washington, D.C., money was the talk. In the community I grew up in, actually, money was important, but education was more important. But the reason I wrote this book was two reasons. One was to preserve the history, which I thought would be lost if somebody didn't take the effort to do that. And it was a time in my life where my memory was still pretty good. I might not could do it today. But at any rate, the other reason was that I just felt strongly about that community and what it contributed to this city. And I strongly believe that if we pattern Jefferson Street, and I'm not talking about just the street, as Dr. Williams said, I'm talking about the Jefferson Street corridor, the community, the streets adjacent, the streets that are joined through arteries. All of these people were a part of the success of Jefferson Street. I guess you all have heard about Greenwood, Oklahoma, how it was devastated by guns and bombs. Well, Jefferson Street basically was decimated by bulldozers and street closures. And that happened around the country. I think you mentioned several cities, Montgomery, Alabama, where Dr. Abernathy was the minister. Dr. Abernathy, who was a lieutenant, I guess, for Martin Luther King, Dr. Martin Luther King. They went through his home and his church and several hundred houses in Montgomery, Alabama, to build the interstate there. And that's why a lot of people around the country feel this was an intentional kind of thing that was done, because it would destroy a lot of the civil rights efforts that were going on during that period of time.
Mm-hmm. Attorney Kendall, you write that the impact was immediate and lasting from the bulldozers. 650 homes, 27 apartment buildings, 126 businesses closed, $4.5 million lost in revenue. I brought a friend to Nashville a few years ago and took her to historic Jefferson Street, and she's an elder. And she had heard about Fisk and Meharry and the HBCUs, and she said, what happened? And although I could talk to her about urban renewal, I wanted to talk to her about the resistance. I wanted to talk to her about the 1967 steering committee. And Dr. Williams, I'd love for you to give us an idea of how the people fought back.
Okay. As soon as it became apparent that the interstate was going to come through, the people in the community organized. And the lead attorney, one of the lead attorney in this protest, was a man that I don't think somebody needs to write a book about this man, Avon Williams. And as you go through the materials from the period, as you look at the research the documents that are available, we find that they called out every single thing that was going to happen prior to it happening. It's almost as though they had a crystal ball of sorts, where they talked about the displacement of the businesses, the displacement of the communities, the people in the communities. They talked about the devastating effect that it would have on them if they selected this route. Now, there was a push to move it to an alternative location, and this is a part of the story that's really interesting to me, because one of the routes was through Belle Meade. It's funny, but it's not funny. But we know
That idea didn't last long, did it?
that that wasn't going to happen because they was plugged up enough into the community, into the system, that they had some protection. Another route that I've saw was where Briley Parkway is, but it was selected to go through North Nashville in two different areas. Community members pushed back, and when I took a moment to read through the lawsuit, you look through the cases demonstrate that oftentimes community meetings were held in places where the members of the community didn't have access to. There was confusion there, and then the next thing you know, it's a done deal. So that's one aspect of it, but there's a lot of forces at work at the time, and let's not lose track of that. This is occurring mid to late 60s, but we also have the Civil Rights Act of 1964 being passed by Congress, which prohibits discrimination in places of public accommodation. And then a couple of years later, you have the Housing Act that is passed. So now African Americans have access to spaces that heretofore they had been denied. Now they can move into a white community. And those with means, some of them did, and I don't know if I can blame them for that. But having said that, with these forces at work, with the interstate coming through, with African Americans have access to spaces to which they had been excluded. When I talk about this in class, I talk about the community suffering a blow that for some of the folks in the community was terminal, right? Because you move out to Bordeaux or the Gold Coast or whatever, and you ain't coming back. But for some, this moment was like taking a dose of slow-acting poison. That is, you die, but you die over time. To their credit, Nashville pushed back, because I've lived in other places where this has occurred. If you go to Savannah, I-4 going into Savannah did the same thing. I've lived in Miami, and I-95 did the same thing. But the only difference, I think, the thing that makes Nashville peculiar is the intellectual environment here was a bit different in those spaces, because you come from places like TSU, Fisk, and Meharry that has a tradition of protest. So,
Wow, thank you for that. Dr. Pethel, can you take us back to that moment of resistance and also the public relations around this idea of urban renewal? I think it's also interesting to use the word renewal. So I'm curious about what was the intersection between public policy and public understanding of what was happening, and did anything get renewed at all?
Well, it all depends on who you talk to. I'm going to scoot up because I'm short, so I want to be able to touch the floor here. But when you talk about urban renewal and some of the policies that happened, and I talked about the Capitol Hill redevelopment plan, that was one of the first. And they're federally funded. But then Nashville seemed to be this place where a lot of experimentation took place with urban renewal. And it was North Nashville, but it was also the Edge Hill area, also in parts of East Nashville. I think we have to also look at the larger context of what's happening. And so I made a list because I wanted to make sure I had my dates straight. But you've got 1957 is when they began school desegregation in Nashville with the Nashville Plan, which was to integrate 1 grade per year, starting with first grade. That same year, you have the bombing of the Hattie Cotton Elementary School as a resistance to that. That might not be public policy in a sense of urban renewal, but it's certainly public policy, and then the white public's reaction to that. Then you're going to have 1957, the lawsuit, 1958, the decision to put the interstate through North Nashville. At the same time, through the HBCUs in 1958, 1959, they are planning the sit-in movement, and which was successful in terms of that businesses were desegregated after a lot of violence and a lot of arrest, but the perseverance of the students, majority students from TSU and Fisk and American Baptist, of course, many of you know this, but John Lewis's first arrest being here in Nashville, but that's also right at the same time and organized by those students. The bombing of Z. Alexander Luby's home is 1960. The silent march follows thereafter and leads to the steps of the courthouse and Mayor Ben West agreeing with Diane Nash that segregation was wrong. All of that is happening in a 3-year period, and I think in some ways the interstate and it's the slow success and momentum of the civil rights movement, not only in Nashville but in places across the South, that culminates in, as Dr. Williams noted, the 1964 Civil Rights Act. I don't know how intentional it was, but that interstate certainly curbed a lot of the momentum of the Black community by destroying their economic potential and growth. As you mentioned, the number of homes and businesses that were affected, I think it was 16 total blocks. And as Lorenzo Washington says, the CEO and co-founder of the Jefferson Street Sound Museum, is that even if the interstate didn't affect you directly, it still was years and years of dust and construction and not being able to access your driveway or a business parking lot, so that some went out of business just because they couldn't withstand the construction process, couldn't attract enough customers to stay in business. So Nashville and public policy, much of it has been trickled down from the federal level, but supported on the state level, and then the local government oftentimes either not handling it well or trying to fix it after it's been implemented. And I think if we're talking about ultimately pulling this thread through to the present, I think the Nashville and Metro government is still working to figure out what is next for Jefferson Street and hopefully its renaissance.
Thank you, thank you. All right, Brother Kendall, there's a name in your book that we need some information about. Dr. Jack Brown.
Oh, Dr. Jackson Brown.
Jackson
We call
Brown.
him Jack Brown.
Yes.
He was a neighbor of mine, about my size, about my weight, and that's why I got like this, because he was a successful man, and I thought you had to stay like this. But he owned actually 3 or 4 drugstores, along Jefferson Street. Now, we called him Dr. Brown, but I don't think he had a pharmacy license. What he actually did, and I'll talk about that just a minute. Of course, you didn't have to have a pharmacy license to own the business, but you had to have a pharmacist, working there, or licensed at that business. Is that me? So what he did, my wife had a great aunt by the name of Maggie Terry, and Maggie Terry graduated Meharry Medical College in 1907 with a pharmacy degree. And of course, back then, women weren't supposed to be doctors of any sort. So they opened a drugstore on Jefferson Street called Terry's Pharmacy, which was right around the corner from where I live now and right down the street from where I was living then. And we always thought her husband, who had a third grade education, was the pharmacist. And we always called him Dr. Terry, not realizing that she was really the doctor. But she also served as the pharmacist, the licensed pharmacist, for several other drugstores who had, they called them drugstores back then, not pharmacies primarily. But she served as the licensed pharmacist for those drugstores. She didn't have to work there. She just had to, sign up that she was the pharmacist for that drugstore. But Dr. Brown, Jack Brown, the one I started out talking about, he drove a Cadillac, convertible Cadillac every day, which made us think he was really successful. He had a diamond ring that he kept on his finger that we heard was worth about $25,000. And of course, back in the 50s, $25,000 was a whole lot of money. To me, it's still a whole lot of money. But he would, like I say, he owned 4 drugstores. He also owned a nightclub called the Club Baron. And the Club Baron is now the Elks Club, which is still located on Jefferson Street. But the Club Baron was a venue where I got to see B.B. King, Tina Turner, Jackie Wilson. All these people performed. And this was like a half a block from my house. Also, on the other side, about a half a block down, was the Club Del Morocco. And that's where Jimi Hendrix got his start, actually. He was the house band there for a couple of years, 1961, 1962, sometime in that area. But getting back to Dr. Brown, I was, as a kid, I said, this guy here, he's driving a Cadillac, he's got this big ring, I want to be just like him. But he was quite a character. I don't know if this was in the newspaper back then, so I guess I can say it. He loved to gamble, and he would go to this club over on Charlotte called the New Era Club, and they gambled upstairs. They shot dice and did all this kind of stuff. And so he would go up there and he would gamble, and he would lose that diamond ring every time. And he would some kind of way go out and work and get enough money to get it back. But he was quite a character. There are a lot of other characters on Jefferson Street that I write about in the book. But everybody on Jefferson Street wasn't like Jack Brown. My next door neighbor was a masonry contractor, Mr. Stewart, Nick Stewart. And my father was a bricklayer, and he was his foreman for many, many years. Well, Mr. Stewart was a very frugal man, but he hired a lot of people in the community. And sometimes he would have 40 and 50 bricklayers and laborers working for him. He did a lot of houses out in the Belmead area and Westmead and Hillwood. And I worked for him during the summer. And he worked it like a slave. I'm telling you, when he come on the job, he wanted you to pick up nails. Don't stand around, do something. But I know it's one time I saw him walking down to the job. Now, he bought a brand new Buick about every 2 years, but he would never drive it to that job. And I asked him, I said, Mr. Stewart, why don't you drive your car down here? He said, well, I tell him I caught the bus. He said, because Mr. Edward, that's what he used to call me. He said, if you tell these people that you got a new car and you can afford all that, they won't hire you. And, that's the way he felt about it. He wouldn't get the job if they thought he was that successful. But when he died in the 60s, he was worth over $500,000. And I mean, this was cash. And over $500,000 back then was, like 2 or 3 million now. And but there were people. We had the good thing about Jefferson Street. The thing that I liked the most, it was a very cohesive community. People looked out after each other. We didn't look at each other in terms of what you got, what you don't have, that kind of thing. And everybody helped each other. That's my memory of it anyway. Other people might remember it differently. But I think that was one of the positive, that was one of the silver linings of Jefferson Street, the Jefferson Street corridor, as I call it, was that we helped each other. I mean, I didn't even know I was poor till I almost got grown. I got a job out at Hillwood washing dishes at Hillwood Country Club, and I say, you poor, because all people my age that were white were having luau's, and that kind of thing. And, we did good to have a little backyard party. But so we did not realize growing up on Jefferson Street that actually we were poor because we had practically everything within the community that we needed. Now, I do a 1 hour and a half PowerPoint that I've done around the city for different book clubs and all. So I was going to tell you to just stop me if I get to talking too long. Just pull me over, call me the gong thing.
Oh, thank you.
All right.
I'm going to do that right now. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Ed. Yeah, you want to add something, Dr. Pethel?
I wanted to add real quick some of the stories that Brother Kimball's telling, but also Linda Wen, who was a native Nashvilleian who grew up on Jefferson Street. And with the help of some Fisk and TSU students and Dr. Lee Williams and many others that contributed, Nashville Sites, which is nashvillesites.org, there's my plug. But we did a Jefferson Street tour that was in part sponsored by Vanderbilt through a Mellon partnership. And it tells a lot of these same stories, and it's a driving tour, but you can kind of hop on and hop off. And I've got 25 students here from Belfast, Ireland, from Queen's University. Will y'all give them a wave?
Yeah.
And they've just finished their first week of 3 taking a class at Belmont, and we did the Jefferson Street tour this past week. And we've also been talking a lot about issues that they've had in Belfast, like the Troubles with religious divisions, and talking about the cities often have divisive histories, and they've had to overcome a lot. But them getting to listen to some of these stories, and because the tour was written by people who grew up on Jefferson Street, you get to hear a lot of those stories on that tour about Mitchell's Cafe and Brother Pig's Meat Market, right, and Mary's Old Fashioned Barbecue, which is still there and still has amazing barbecue, but the Matthew Walker Health Clinic. Yeah. And the stories themselves are so compelling. But if you take the tour, you realize, well, this is what it starts with. Henry Good Jelly Jones is where it actually starts, his juke joint. But these are the stories of the past. How can we take this vibrant community that existed, and how can we bring it back to a vibrant place?
I love that. That's the question, right? And that's the challenge of today. It says from renewal to revitalization. So this idea of transitions. Dr. Lee, you said before, transitioning to what? And transitioning for who? But I want to interject a little bit of entertainment in our conversation with these good people. We have heard Jefferson Street called many, many things, and several of them are anatomical. It's been the spine of Nashville, the artery of Black Nashville, the pulse of Black Nashville, the backbone of Black Nashville, the heartbeat, and I did hear a creative one, it was Black Broadway. Mm-hmm. So let's imagine for a minute as we think about transitioning, right? If Jefferson Street were a woman, what shoes did she have on in 1950s, and what is she rocking in 2023? That's for all 3 of you.
You want me to go first?
Go for it. Yeah, but don't take my answer.
In 1950, in the 1950s, when I lived on Jefferson Street, a woman probably would have had fancy high-heel shoes on. Now, they would have on flip-flops.
Not even Crocs? Flip-flops, okay. Dr.
So
Pfeffer.
that would be, you got my second half.
Okay.
The first one, I would say, I was thinking more students, probably because I'm a teacher, but I was thinking more like saddle Oxfords as school age. And so then those same school age kids today, probably wearing Crocs.
Crocs, okay. Dr. Lee. Jefferson Street is a lady.
And I'm struggling here because I'm probably the most fashion challenged person in the house right now. But definitely, just from the photos that I've seen, Hills, Jefferson Street, for those that I've spoken to that have memories of it, was the place to be seen, right? A place to show off. So the shoes would reflect that. And I think about one of the most important, to this day, institutions in that area. You know, it's the Black church. So we see them on Sundays, and I envision women having nice shoes on, maybe heels, but not club heels. I envision them wearing these immaculate crowns. And I attend First Baptist Capitol Hill, and the crown game is still strong there. But now, I agree with the other panelists. You know, I see a wide variety of Crocs. And I'm not hating on Crocs, but I never thought they would come back, right? But they better than back. A wide array of Air Jordans that I might have purchased back in the day for $100 and discarded, that are now going for $400 or $500. So, and slides as well. Nice. That's very fashionable.
So do we hear that Sister Jefferson Street is contemporary? She's up to date. Yeah. She's a little bit of a fashionista, even though Crocs are a little on the edge of that. I'm not sure. But I want us to think about that. Like, what is Jefferson Street 2023? And before we go into questions, and I know we just have 15 minutes left, if we could just name some things that we've noted in today's Jefferson Street that may be evidence of this transition. I have a little list, and I have on there what's coming up. July 22nd is the Jefferson Street Jazz and Blues Festival. That's on the list. What about you all? What else is evidence that we're going into a revitalization season?
I would, I've had the pleasure of getting to know Carlos Partee, who runs was the co-founder of the Nashville Black Market. And it brings together, it's not always on Jefferson Street, it's pop-up, but looking at Black-owned entrepreneurial ventures, I think is showing a certain, and I think they're at the farmers market every Friday night. But I think that's a great next generation, and a Belmont class that I worked with this past year in conjunction with another professor, Dr. Williams is in this was a part of this project as well. But we created a documentary called Exit 207, Jefferson Street, the Soul of Nashville. And we can't show it publicly yet because we're entering it in some film festivals. But at some point, I'd love for all of you to see it. It's about 20 minutes. But Carlos was mentored by Lorenzo Washington. And so I think we see this multi-generational torch being passed. And I think that gives me a lot of hope.
I love that, thank you. And my daughter just went to the Nashville Black Market and had a great time at Farmers Market. I love that mention. Brother Ed.
You know, after the interstate, we had an exit up, as Dr. Williams spoke of people off of Jefferson Street. There were many, many reasons for that, obviously, because they tore down the houses, got rid of a lot of the businesses. But where my parents lived, where I grew up, they put a fence directly in front of the homes, all the way from where the Heritage Center is down there, all the way down to where Harper's restaurant was. And we wondered, what's that fence about? It was on the inside of the sidewalk. You had a sidewalk on the outside where you could just, walk up and down the sidewalk. So I, along with a couple other people, went down to the Department of the State Department of Highways, and we met with the commissioner. And we asked him, said, what was the purpose of this fence? It was like a 10-foot fence with a barbed wire on top, blocking the businesses and the homes that were still there, which my mother and father still had a home there. And he said, well, from what he understood, it was to keep off the dogs and the cats and other people from getting up on that interstate. I said, sir, the fence is on the inside of the sidewalk. People already walk, dogs and cats already walk up and down that area. So he said, oh, so in about 2 weeks they took the fence down. But that was a big controversy. And that goes back to people believing that all of this was intentional. In other words, you devalue the property to such an extent that people will give it away, because they can't get to it. They named the alley behind the house Beasley Street. It's still named Beasley Street. So they changed it to a street. And I told them they need to name it Kendall Street. No, I don't want an alley named after me. But that's the revitalization. What I would like to see happen on Jefferson Street. We already have a lot of gentrification going on in the area, especially in apartment complexes, et cetera. I would like to see we'll never have the same Jefferson Street, and we shouldn't have. We shouldn't have a community that's 99% African American, with all the businesses and nightclubs playing just basically rhythm and blues. I would like to see a community that has a vast diversity of genre in music. For example, jazz, country music, the whole gamut of things. And I think that's going to happen eventually. It might not happen during my lifetime. I'm not quite that old, but I hope to live another 25 years. But anyway, I believe it's going to be demanded because of the people who are moving in the area are going to want those kinds of things close by. If you look at 12th South, but it just developed overnight. And I'm not that impressed, to be very honest with you, from a standpoint, because we don't have any African-American businesses there. Practically every business in 12th South is owned by Caucasians or other people. So I want to see Jefferson Street. I want to see the people who live there, who are a product of that community, to also have some ownership in that community. Now, one of the things I think a lot of people don't realize is that from about 12th Avenue South, especially from about 12th Avenue South, the TSU campus, most of that property is still owned by African Americans. A lot of people think that it's different, but they haven't sold out. They haven't sold their property. And one of the reasons they haven't sold it is that the people who come and offer money want to steal it. They offer them the kind of prices that I wouldn't sell it either. But and I feel badly because my mother and them sold the property where we used to live. But I can see Jefferson Street developing, but it's going to have participation from everybody in that, and with people in that community. Like you said earlier, when they built the interstate, the first meeting they had was in 1955. A bunch of business people here in the city got together, and they didn't tell the black community anything about having that meeting. And that's when they started the planning. And Dr. Williams, there was one other route that you didn't mention earlier that went back behind Tennessee State campus, through the farmland. Mm-hmm. And when they were asked about that route, they said, well, it would cost $8 million more money to go that route. $8 million, drop in the bucket in building an interstate. But anyway, that's
Thank you, Brother Kendall. Thank you very much. I think we'd like to hear from you all. We have a question. Are there mics to pass, Elliot? Okay, thank you.
I have a preacher's voice, and I want to get to a question.
Okay.
But I finished Tennessee State University in 1975. There were no jobs. And everybody who found success in my class went to Houston and Atlanta. I went to Atlanta. Most of my sorority sisters are in Houston. Nothing for us to do as graduates holding bachelor's degrees in Nashville. I returned in '93 by marriage, and Jefferson Street had not changed. In 1993, Jefferson Street looked like 1975. All of a sudden, that revitalization is gentrification, because I live just behind TSU up on that hill. What I see, and I got a different set of eyes from everybody. They held a meeting. Somebody talked about them meetings they hold. They held a meeting up at Hadley Park maybe about 4 months ago, and it just so happened that, and I'm not going to name her, went into the community center for another reason, and they welcomed her, saying she was there for the meeting. And needless to say that the meeting was all white, and they were voting to turn Hadley Park into a dog park. Now, they've already done that to most of the parks in North Nashville. That revitalization should say gentrification. And all of the houses that have been bought have gone from being single-family homes to multi-dwellings, so that the population in Jefferson Street, and the banks ain't giving black folks no money. That's another thing. We hadn't gotten to the economics of Jefferson Street. So everybody that's moving in the area is white, and we're talking black and white here. We can't get around it. So in the meantime, the whites that are moving in are bringing the biggest dogs you've ever seen, so they have to have dog parks. But in the meantime, we're up in a serious battle. I walk in Hadley Park every day. We're in a serious battle with all these big dogs, that gentrification. They not just bringing people, they bringing dogs in a way that those of us who are traditionally black, you know, I was raised in a house, my mama said if it ain't got 2 feet, it can't come in her house. So in the meantime, my question is, while we celebrate Jefferson Street, what are we celebrating?
What are we celebrating? Who would like to take that?
I'll take a stab at it. My field is Reconstruction, and the thing that moved me as a historian is how we transition from enslaved to freed people. So by definition, I study the community. When I look at Jefferson Street, I look at it with a critical eye, asking the question why it developed in the way that it developed. You know, in thinking about Jim Crow, we understand that, you know, we had to create these spaces in order to just be assured that we can go places and be treated fully as human beings. Now, why do I celebrate these places? You know, we don't have many monuments or markers that celebrate our transition from enslaved to freed people. We don't have monuments anywhere that celebrate, that mark, that tells us to hold up and consider how we negotiated through Jim Crow. The only thing we really have, and this is not anything that the state does or the community does, the only thing we have are our churches, our schools, and our communities, our homes. So when I look at that period and I think about Jefferson Street, I celebrate it because it demonstrates our capacity to deal with the worst that America has to offer and to transform it into something spectacular. I oftentimes wonder, when we look at population patterns in our cities, and this is true for Nashville or Birmingham or Atlanta or wherever, and I look at where the populations are directed. Nobody lived in North Nashville by accident, right? Nobody lived in Edge Hill by accident. If you were black in the city, this is where you had to live. And I oftentimes wonder if, the communities really expected us to survive, because these places were woefully underfunded. Schools were not the best, and even when it comes to it's something as simple as finding a space to relax, other than Hadley Park, oftentimes our backyards we have to serve in that capacity. So when I look at Jefferson Street, I celebrate the fact that this space was created to help our ancestors navigate through Jim Crow. So when we honor these communities, we are honoring essentially the people, the ideas and efforts that made me be able to be a professor at TSU. Okay, so that's why I celebrate it. But one last thing, and then I'll shut up on this. It's critical that y'all tell these stories to your youngsters. But not only tell them, record them, right? So we can have it. So we don't have to have any debate on what auntie said or uncle said, right? Because we got it there. Because if we don't chronicle these stories, if we don't archive them, the same folks that come in and displace us, they'll start making stuff up. And then the history will be lost. So I don't know if I quite answered your question, but those are my thoughts.
Janine?
Thank you. Yes. Thank you.
Oh, I was going to try to answer part of that question, but go ahead. She have a question.
I think what the last person said is really important about how the gentrification and the cultural clashes that happen within a community, how to address that. And I don't know if Stand Up Nashville or the Equity Alliance or NOAA, who is addressing her question as a community group, so that it's not about keeping just business alive like a capitalist kind of view of Jefferson Street, but it is about maintaining the community and the culture of Jefferson Street.
Great question. So who is spearheading the cultural cohesion of Jefferson Street now?
I don't know.
You don't know?
Be
Dr.
honest.
Pethel? Dr. Lee?
I feel like that Edge Hill has perhaps a bit of stronger neighborhood organizations. I think maybe that's something Jefferson Street is developing or working on. Most of what I'm familiar with are more singularly focused organizations to like save certain properties, like to save the Boyd House. Dr. Williams runs the North Nashville Heritage Project. But in terms of the business side, I'm not confident who that is.
Certainly the North Nashville Heritage Project, certainly, yes.
And what's funny about that is it started by accident. If you don't believe in accidents, by divine providence. A student asked me a question in the classroom that I couldn't answer about North Nashville. And me being kind of slick, I was like, well, we'll find out together. And it was only supposed to last for 2 years. It was 2010, so but having said that, I don't think there's one organization that we can look to for everything, because mine is academic, right? North Nashville Heritage Project is academic. It's at TSU. But we graduate those students, right? So I feel as though the voices that need to be most involved are in the community. So Equity Alliance and some other organizations that I might not even know of at the time might be some of those things that could help develop the cultural sensitivity, the ability to move in the community and not destroy the community. I think that they need to be involved as well.
You know, I think it's going to take several organizations. You know, I still live in the community. I live on Scoville Street, which is right behind Jefferson Street, where I grew up, and it's being gentrified. We have probably 8 or so white families that move on the street, and like the lady says, most of them have dogs, but they keep them on a leash, and they walk them past my house, and we speak. And most of them have the little scoop things that, you know, they pick up the poop. But it's going to take that. Now it's not a business, but there's a home that used to be a home on Jefferson Street, right there around 25th. I can't think of the name of what he calls it, but his name is Fred Bailey. And what is it? McDempsey House. And he has a lot of programs that he's starting that deal with this kind of concept that we're talking about how to have an influence on what happens in that area. Now, personally, I have talked to some of the politicians and other business people. What I would like to see on Jefferson Street, and I've been talking about this for about 30 years, is a motel, right there at 26th and Jefferson Street. Harold Love Sr., when he was living, we talked about that often. And my concept was, by having it there, it would be the first, I think now, be the first hotel you would see coming from the West. And it's located right between all the universities, Tennessee State, Fisk, and Meharry. Give them all 1.5% interest in it. I mean, you know, there's some ideas of how to really make the thing work. And because if I'm going to book somebody to come down and they come in to TSU, I'm going to book them at my hotel that I have an interest in. But there are a lot of things that can be done. But as I said earlier, we're not going to reinvent Jefferson Street as to what it was. So we have to accept the fact that gentrification is happening. It's going to happen. We can't stop that. I agree with the lady who spoke earlier. You know, their jobs are better in Nashville. I served on the Metropolitan Council, not this last term, but the time before, and there's a lot of industry moving to Nashville, and there are a lot of opportunities for people to get good jobs that you wouldn't have back in the 1990s or 70s. But to go back just a little bit, Jefferson Street, one of the things that when in the 50s and 60s, one of the things that was good about this is the silver linings. There were jobs right there in the community. I mean, we had a couple of banks there. We still got one bank, Citizen Saving Bank, which is located at 21st and Jefferson Street. We had banks, we had insurance companies, we had doctor's office, dentist's office, and they employed people in the community. We had major grocery stores, had 2 major grocery stores right there in the area, and they employed people in the community. So there are opportunities, but I think we're going to accept the fact that gentrification is going to occur. There's really nothing wrong with it. And gentrification, a lot of people misunderstand what it means. Gentrification is not white and black. It's money and no money. It's really about economics when you talk about gentrification. It's who can afford to move in that area. But anyway, that's my concept of it.
Thank you, Brother Kendall. Do we have time for 2 more? Okay, 3 more. 1, 2, 3.
Okay. I just wanted to say my name's Natalie Bell, and I'm also a native Nashvilleian. And like Barbara here, I grew up at a time here when a lot of African Americans, they'd go to school and then you'd go away to get work because there wasn't much going on here in terms of opportunities. And however, I came back and I've been back now for 6 years. I am so excited to be back home in Nashville. It's, of course, a much different place now. But I definitely feel the sentiment that you were expressing about a lot of our history being lost. Hadley Park is a historic area. I hope that we can work together to save Hadley Park. I would hate to see it turn into a dog park. It was a respectful place, and so it's an important, to African American heritage here in Nashville. I wanted to say too, one thing that we were talking about, who's really working together to save our heritage here, and there are different groups doing different things, and I hope that we can work together more. I'm glad that the Nashville Public Library is making this space available to talk about Jefferson Street. The Nashville Sites tours that you've worked on is something that is helping to bring tourists to our area. And that's something that is a good thing. I wanted to say too that those Nashville Sites tours are something that the Metro Nashville Historical Commission has helped to bring about with the various parties that are involved in that. And the Metro Nashville Historical Commission is doing what it can to preserve not only African American history, but all of our history here in Nashville. We have a survey. I am working with the Historical Commission, and Dr. Williams is on the advisory committee to preserve the civil rights sites in North Nashville that still exist. So there's a survey that we're circulating. I just wanted to let it be known the Metro Nashville Historical Commission is interested in hearing from the public if you have knowledge about places that were important to the civil rights movement in Nashville. I have a QR code that I can share with you after the program to allow you to participate in the survey.
Thank you, Ms. Bell, and welcome home.
Gentleman up here.
Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Eric Brown, also a Nashville native. Just recently had to sell my home in North Nashville, but definitely love the history of North Nashville. My question is actually this. A lot of times when we talk about North Nashville, everybody has their own particular vision of what that looks like or what it should be. In a lot of ways, I see a lot of tension that happens around it. People talk about what revitalization is, what gentrification is, and what can be done to make North Nashville this great place that we love based on its history. My question is, a lot of times when I see this, it's usually fights between those who have power, don't have power, those who are poor, those who are rich, or those who are seasoned residents as well as our younger residents. What did intergenerational power or change look like during that time? When we talk about the history of North Nashville, what can we learn about intergenerational change from that time for this time so that we can also see what that looks like as far as unity?
Intergenerational change.
I'm not sure. I understand.
Well, if you're talking about intergenerational, tongue twister, change, but also wealth, I think that's one of the major issues. It's an issue between those with money and with no money, and I believe in doing the research for the documentary that I mentioned earlier, is that North Nashville is 75% renters, and that the average rent for a one bedroom is $1,100 a month, and so it's hard to build wealth even in your own lifetime, much less pass it down when you're dealing with those kinds of costs, the cost of living.
And young people tend to want to get away from their parents. And I don't fault them for that. We can talk about how that plays out historically, but once you become 18, 19, you just want to get out. And, they go out and they get college someplace else, start setting up roots, and they be like, why do I want to come back home? Why do I want to return there? And I don't know, I guess my response to that is that I don't know if we're doing a good job in teaching our young folks the importance of the spaces, the importance of North Nashville. Somebody asked me about North Nashville, I'll say, well, I'll talk about Jefferson Street, but sometimes I'm given to a lot of hyperbole, but I'm not right now at this moment. That community is one of the places where the great dramas in America played out, in that the North Nashville is a stage upon which our young folks helped redefine what it meant to be Americans. And your house on Scoville or Hyman or Jackson is a part of that community, a part of that story, a part of, in many ways, these built structures are expressions of Black freedom, American freedom. So I don't know if that message is, when I first moved here, I probably should have got that little lot that I could have gotten off of Buchanan. You can't afford it now.
Can I just bootstrap on that? I agree. One of the things we don't do, generational wealth among Black people historically has been houses, property. We didn't have big bank accounts, but you left your children a house, and that's what you worked for, to pay for that house so you'd have something to leave to your children. And I have a house. My wife passed in November, and we've been married 58 years, and I got a pretty good sized house. And I thought about selling it and downsizing, for obvious reasons. And I talked to my granddaughter, she has a family. I said, well, why don't I let you have this house? So I met with she and her husband, and his comment was, oh yeah, we could live here a couple of years until we could go out and buy us a house out in somewhere, I don't know, of course I'm an inner city guy. I live on Scoville Street, wouldn't live anywhere else. But I think you're right, and we have to educate our children on the value of property. Money goes away. I mean, they sell a house, 2 years later they broke. But that property, land is going to be there, and it has value. And we've got to really try to educate our children to that factor, that this is wealth.
I think it goes back to the importance of knowing your history and making sure that history is being passed down. And given the fact that I've talked so much about higher education and the importance of that, the continued role of Fisk, Meharry, TSU, and American Baptist to pass those lessons down to the next generation to learn their history, but also to make a plan for the future, because we are passing the torch to this next generation. They're going to help us answer those questions.
Thank you. We have our final question back over there.
Thank you. I appreciate all of you for being here today. My name is Keith Binion. I'm not a Nashville native, but I've lived here for, I guess, over 40 years now since coming to Tennessee State. My question is this: is there a debt, whether it be public or public-private commitment, that is owed to the Jefferson Street culture and community, and who's to pay and how much?
Is there a debt owed? Who's to pay and how much?
Well, I don't know if there's still a debt, but at the time they built the interstate, there was a promise and in Minotti fought for that for many, many years until his death, that they would build a deck across the interstate at 18th, not the one that they're talking about now, but a deck that would have basically displaced businesses that were in the community at that time. It never happened, kind of like 40 acres and a mule, but it just never happened. And so I don't know if there is an existing debt. I served on a council. I know that the city hasn't said that it owes anything, even though there are special projects that are looking at Jefferson Street with the transportation department and others to do things on Jefferson Street, but they're mostly cosmetic things. They're not development of housing or businesses and that kind of thing, and that's what we really need.
Thank you. You have a comment?
Yeah, and this is another one of Dr. Williams' wild ideas. There are some substantial construction projects that are going on in and around Jefferson Street. But a lot of the folks in the community that could do the work, they don't have access to it. Now, I'm gonna call out some spaces, and don't get me wrong, because the first place I'm gonna call out is the new baseball stadium down there. What is it, Tennessee Park, I think it is. Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I love baseball. But as that place went up, and I think that its total cost might have been somewhere around $100 million, maybe a little bit less. But here's the thing, I oftentimes envision what it might have meant for one plumber in North Nashville to do maybe 3 or 4 of the bathrooms in there. Because we got people in that community that can install toilets, that can lay tiles, and so forth. Just, you didn't have to do all of them, just one part of it that would have been separated for those plumbers in that community. You start thinking about what sort of wealth that could have generated, right? Because now after they've worked on it, the next time a project come up, they say, yeah, I worked on a $100 million project. So you think about how life-changing that could be. And then if we move a bit further to the convention center, which as the crow flies is maybe a mile away from Jefferson Street, maybe that plumber, that guy that lays tile, that brick mason, he ain't got to do it all just a little bit, but that would be enough to lay a foundation for other folks to come in there and make some money on future projects. So I'm saying all that to say this. This might not speak to the reparations aspect of your question, but a commitment needs to be made to the people that are still there, that if there's going to be some work there, a part of it is going to go to you. If we're going to have a feast in this community, y'all can at least get, a slice of pie or a chicken leg or something like that. But they need to be able to gain access to some of this money that's being generated in the community.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. And since this is a family reunion, thank you for bringing up chicken and you said pie?
Yeah, I'm hungry.
Thank you, hungry? Okay, we all hungry. Thank you all, time travelers, for traveling with us. Did you want one final comment?
I just want to make a statement. If anybody is interested in buying a book, I don't have any books, and I'm not here to sell books. But don't order it. You can buy it on Amazon, but don't order it until next week because I got to increase my inventory.
Thank you, Cousin Edward. We appreciate you. Next week, order the book. Thank you very much.
All right, let's give another round of hand to our panelists and our moderator. Thank you. So grateful to all of you for sharing your time with us and lending your voices and your knowledge to this event. We've all been transported by the sharing of your precious memories of the Jefferson Street corridor, taking us back to a place of cohesion, a place of community in the truest sense of the word. And thank you for sharing with us about the immediate and lasting impact of the federally funded devastation of I-40. And whether you're a lifelong resident or new to the area, we hope that you leave today with a deeper understanding of this city that we call home. Come visit us upstairs sometimes, Civil Rights Room, Votes for Women Room. You can schedule time for programs like Dr. Williams and Dr. Pethel do at least once a year. They bring groups of students down to be with us. And you can look for us on Facebook and Instagram, Nashville Public Library Special Collections Center. And I've been told to remind you all that there's still plenty of food left, so get some more food on your way out. And thank you all so much for joining us today.